The first CC4 Museum of Welsh Cricket talk of the winter season and the first ever talk via Zoom. Before we start, I just need to go through some housekeeping and some introductions. I'm hoping you can see that to my left is Mark Frost, my colleague from the community team at Glamorgan Cricket. Mark is acting as our moderator stroke manager tonight, and if for any reason the internet connection here in St Fagans in sunny Cardiff were to drop out, then Mark will take over and I'll try and log back in. You should be seeing as well, we have live from Ogmore by Sea, Alex Wharf, who I'm really delighted Alex has been able to join us. Those of you who were regularly attending our meetings in the museum at Sapphire Gardens will know that Alex had agreed several dates last year, and being a man of principle, an upstanding individual, Alex has agreed to open the batting this evening. That might be a promotion, Alex, for you, but I'm really pleased you can join us. Just in terms of housekeeping, we do have a lot of questions which people have sent in advance, which I'll go through. If there is anything that you would like to ask Alex, there is a chat function at the bottom of your screen that you should be able to use, and if time permits, we will try and cover as many questions. As usual, the guillotine in the museum is round about 9 o'clock, so we'll do that. Well, Mark is now recording everything, so we are live. So, Alex, good evening. Welcome to the first CC4 Museum of Welsh Cricket winter talk of the winter.
No, thank you. It's great to be here. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Obviously under strange circumstances. All of a sudden, I've got a tickly cough as well, which doesn't sound too great, but it's just happened. Okay. No, it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
I'm good. I hope that tickly cough doesn't continue, and you have to have any further tests. But in time-honoured fashion in the museum, what we normally do is I have a series of images on a screen behind me. So rather than our cabinet here in our dining room here at Hicknall Towers, what I'm going to do is I'll start off just by sharing my screen and hoping that you can all see this video, this very short little slideshow that I'm just going to run through, just with some of the highlights of Alex's career, more as a sort of an hors d'oeuvre really for this evening, and this might help to prompt further questions. I know, Alex, that in some cases, certainly not in your case, but with some of the older former Glamorgan players who've come along, it's been a good reminder of what they did. Anyway, so I must apologise. The first couple of slides will probably people will see you as they've never seen you before. But you did start off as a very young man on the Yorkshire staff. There you are in your earliest years with the Colts, the academy, and of course you did make your second team for Yorkshire back in 1990. And then, as we all know, you made a fantastic start to your first-class career against Warwickshire at Scarborough, your first ever county championship game for the White Rose County, and your first wicket, Brian Lara. And as we'll hear during the course of the evening, you did manage to take the scalps of quite a few other very notable players. Well, you then had a spell, of course, with Nottinghamshire, and you were with Nottinghamshire from 1997 through to 1999. And as we'll talk in a bit more detail a little bit later, it was when you were with Notts that there was an innings in particular, a performance at Colwyn Bay, which attracted the interest of the Glamorgan hierarchy, and you then saw the light and you came to Wales. And so there you are in your first year with Glamorgan, the summer of 2000. You're there wearing an uncapped player's sweater, but that wasn't with you for very long, because during the course of the summer, your first year with us in Wales, you managed to win your Glamorgan cap. It was a year which also saw you score 100 on first class debut well, I know it was against Oxford University, but there aren't many people who have scored 100 on their first class debut for Glamorgan. Callum Taylor did that this summer. And you also, in the year 2000, you're also a member of the very successful Glamorgan team. There's a rogues gallery of the other players who were alongside you. You were a member of the Glamorgan team that reached Lords, the final of the Benson and Hedges against Gloucestershire. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more in due course about that. And we'll talk about the likes there in that back row with you of your fellow bowlers, Steve Watkin. I can see there as well in the back row, Dean Koska, who of course you're now working with as a match referee. There's Michael Powell, there's Steve James, there's Adrian Dale, there's Matt Maynard, Keith Newell on the front row there. Your fellow bowlers on the left, Owen Parkin and Darren Thomas. In the middle there, Adrian Shaw, who of course was behind the stumps, and then Crofty and Herb or Matthew Elliott as well. As I said, you were putting in some fantastic performances, both in white ball cricket and also in red ball cricket. And it was your success in Glamorgan's white ball team that ended up with you going on quite deservedly to win higher honours. I mention the white ball games because in 2004, under Captain Croft, there you are, holding on to the Sunday League title, a game or that is the presentation at Warwickshire, but Glamorgan had already secured the title 3 weeks before when Glamorgan beat Lancashire at Colwyn Bay. 2004 was also a summer when you appeared for the team at T20 Finals Day. I know we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, and it was your performances in white ball cricket then that saw you then move on, as we can see here, to play for England. That image there is from the tour you made to Namibia, South Africa, and in this case, Zimbabwe, in the winter of 2004 and 2005. You'd actually made your debut in white ball internationals for England in 2004. I'll let you say who your 3 wickets were on debut. I don't want to steal too much of your thunder, but if you start off with Brian Lara, the 3 wickets that you took on debut at Trent Bridge, it was another very, very fine haul. Of course, you were rubbing shoulders here with the likes of Kevin Peterson as England were preparing for the 2005 Ashes. And whereas the gentleman on the left in the photo here went on to be a member of the 2005 Ashes winning team, sadly, Alex, I know injuries and other niggles prevented you then from carrying on playing at international level, but you did also tour the West Indies with England A in the in the winter, I should say, of 2006. Well, you retired after a decent benefit year in 2009. Of course, we now know you as a gentleman in a white coat with a white hat. You can see there in your right hand, you've got your counter, your clicker, and we now know you as one of the country's leading and most foremost umpires, emerging umpires, not only have you since the summer of 2013. Not only have you been standing in domestic games, but you've been standing in international games. And I think it was really nice that you made your international debut in 2018, England against Australia at Sapphire Gardens. Here we can see on the right-hand side Maurice Erasmus, the South African umpire there, as your colleague. And of course, this year we've all seen you on the live streams. We've all seen you in the bubbles at the Ageas Bowl and at Old Trafford. And I know there are some questions which people have already asked, which we'll cover later on, about what life was like in those bubbles. And here you are, I have to say, with a very fetching umbrella, it must be said. Pink is your colour, Alex, it must be said. And also with your colleague there, Michael Burns. Again, another former county stalwart who is making a name for themselves in the umpiring world. And here you are at T20 Finals Day. This was the first day at Edgbaston, the first Saturday in October. Perhaps I could say, Alex, and again, I'm showing my background as a former geography teacher, officially that day is now in the record books as the wettest ever day on record in the UK. Enough rain fell on that day across the UK to fill Loch Ness. So there we are.
Wow.
There we are. So you're part of history there, mate. But I know everything went well on the Sunday, and it was great that T20 Finals Day this year could go ahead without recourse to a bowl out. I know from talking with other officials and the scorers who were there, that was always an option, but it was great that you and Michael Burns, together with David Milnes and Martin Saggers and the Stuart Cummins, the match referee, you were able to get things, and at least it was a cricket. It was a game of cricket rather than a bowl out. So there we are. A quick run through. Alex, you're just as I said, as an entree, just to set the ball rolling then, with just a few things to kick us off. So Alex, let's start at the very beginning. You were born in Bradford, 1975. Talk us through your earliest years, your earliest memories then of playing cricket and perhaps playing other sports as well.
Yeah, no, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Thank you very much for that, Higgers. Obviously, I've got a few sort of tears I'm holding back from seeing all those young images of myself. Yeah, I was born in Bradford. I obviously played school sport and stuff like that, but some people may know this, some people may not. But my father passed away when I was only 8, and my mother remarried who became my stepfather, Derek Wharf, who was a keen club cricketer. He basically ran junior teams and stuff like that as well up at Buttershaw St Paul's, which was my first club. And I just went along with that. And if it hadn't have been perhaps for his influence, maybe I wouldn't have been involved in cricket as long as I have, or if at all, really. So I've got to sort of thank my lucky stars that, you know, somebody was willing to step into my father's footsteps and treat me like a son. So I've got a big sort of thank you for that, really. And they're my sort of early days of playing cricket. I played, you know, I was about 11 when I started playing, and I played all the way through to sort of under 18s. Obviously, as time went by, I remember my first ever game, I got bowled by a pea roller. You know, I just had a wild swing like I normally would do and I got bowled. But yeah, I kind of played under 12s, under 13s, under 15s, under 18s. And then it wasn't until I was about maybe 13 or 14, I started sort of playing a little bit of representative cricket. So your schools cricket, you know, Bradford schools, and then obviously I went on to play for Yorkshire schools, not in the team all the time. I played under 13s, but then I didn't play until under 15s. And I was playing sort of the league team representatives. So there's like a Joel. Cricket in Bradford is pretty major, or it was when I was a kid, and there's lots of opportunities to play different levels, different standards. And I was just fortunate enough that I could sort of bat, bowl, field. You know, I played football as well, so I was quite sporty. I played a bit of rugby at school, but football took over. And then when I left, I sort of got to the age of 15, 16, I actually had the opportunity to go on a YTS at Yorkshire, or I could choose a YTS at Sheffield United. So I was quite lucky that I had a few options, because I wasn't particularly interested in school, if truth be known. I'd rather be out playing and, you know, doing sport and having a bit of a laugh and a joke with the boys or whatever it may be. So, you know, fortunate.
Who were your early heroes then? Sporting heroes or cricketing heroes?
I didn't really know much about county cricket as a kid. I didn't really, you know, my stepfather actually took me to watch Yorkshire at Harrogate once, and it rained all day. So I've got a scorebook somewhere. I think it's at my mother's house with all the sort of David Bairstows and people like that. I've signed it. Phil Carrick, all those types of people. But I actually played with David Bairstow. So I was playing junior cricket. I got into the Yorkshire sort of schools teams, and I played with Andrew Bairstow, who's an older sort of half brother who played for Derbyshire. And my first ever pro I ever knew was David Bairstow. So he was my club captain. You know, he kind of sort of took me under his wing a little bit. And then I suppose you then get into things. Of course, I'd watch cricket with my grandma on television every now and then. I suppose Ian Botham was my favourite. He'd just come back from a bit of a ban, I think, and he had sort of blonde, sort of like a blonde mullet type haircut. I remember that, you know, and taking wickets. I think it was against Australia.
Yeah.
But that was my sort of limits on what I really knew about the sport, to be fair.
And then you said there was football as well. So did you have any football heroes or
Brian Robson?
Right.
But I was actually a goalkeeper, so
okay.
I loved Brian Robson. Peter Shilton, obviously, he was like England's keeper and stuff like that. You know, and then obviously as I kind of get a little bit older, you know, people like Peter Schmeichel.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a Man United fan. It's actually you've caught me on a good night tonight, because this is how much I love the club. Man United playing tonight against PSG, so you should be honoured.
Thank you, Wharfie. I'm glad. So, as I said earlier, you made your second 11 debut for Yorkshire in 1993. Can you remember how that came about?
I suppose it's like anything. I mean, I went on this YCS at Yorkshire 16, then that kind of developed into the academy. And then obviously, as you would probably know, going back over the years, a massive conveyor belt of seam bowlers, all-rounders, that type of thing. And it was just a case of, you know, right place, right time, got selected, you know, and kind of didn't necessarily play every game after that, but, you know, you were always there or thereabouts. And it's a case of, well, when I grew up, looking back, it's a case of educating young players. You know, so obviously you might get a game, and then it's a case of going away, and the next coach will work on those things that the second team coach has picked up, or whatever it may be. And you know, I was fairly lucky and enjoyed my time playing second team cricket and stuff like that. So
who was Yorkshire's first team coach at the time?
Well, the Steve Oldham obviously sort of ran the club in a way. Yeah, Esso. Obviously, back in those days as well, I suppose, captains of the clubs had huge says. It wasn't a case of like a coach as a manager. he would have had an influence. I mean, Esso kind of took me under his wing anyway. He kind of liked my sort of style. He was a swing bowler himself, and I was, you know, as a young kid, I was a swing bowler. You know, and it's a case of doing the right things at the right times. And I think that if you step out of line a little bit at a club like Yorkshire, you can easily move down that pecking order. And so then you've got to work your way back up. So.
Yeah. So when you made your first class debut in 1994, were you a full-time member of staff, or were you on a summer contract, or were you just on a play as you go basis?
Oh, good question. Good question. I think I was on the staff at that point. I think I was on the staff. I was playing regular second team cricket. I was doing pretty well at second team cricket. You know, and I suppose in a way, Yorkshire always seemed or used to seem to give somebody a debut at Scarborough.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing kind of happens. They usually sometimes give a county cap to people at Scarborough, but especially back in the day. And I think I'd just been doing very well. I'd played against Warwickshire that week in a second team game, and and had a good game. I'd kind of backed up a month, 6 weeks of worth of games, done well, and it was just a case of maybe there was a couple of injuries, and right, let's pick young Alex.
Yeah. Well, there was a certain chap called Brian Charles Lara then in the Warwickshire lineup. Yeah. So just talk me through. Did it pitch middle hit off, or did pitch middle from the outside edge and taken behind the stumps?
I think it was. I actually spoke to somebody not long ago, and they said they were there, and they said, "Oh, it was a bit of a horror delivery." I don't remember it being a horror delivery. I just remember it being a length ball that he chucked his hands at, and he edged it through to the keeper. Because that was the year that he'd broken the records. He'd got the Test highest score and the first class highest score.
Well, it
was a proud moment, and at the end of the day, I mean, the ironic thing in that game, I actually opened the bowling with Peter Hartley, who's obviously an umpire as well, and somebody I've looked up to, and it's kind of strange how he looked back at things, and a bit of luck sometimes, and that's what you need.
Yeah, well, I was doing a little bit of research the other night ahead of this, and actually, it was quite an impressive Yorkshire bowling lineup. All so, as you said, you opened the bowling with Pete Hartley, Mark Robinson, of course, who then later went to Sussex and England's women's coach, Richard Stemp, and Gareth Batty.
I think it wasn't actually Gareth Batty, it was Jeremy Batty.
Sorry, Jeremy Batty, sorry. Yeah. I was going to say, to have Richard Stemp and Gareth Batty, that would be quite an interesting changing room. But yeah, Richard Stemp, Jeremy Batty, and also bowling was Michael Vaughan.
Yeah. So me and Michael actually grew up together. When I say we grew up together, he's from Sheffield, I'm Bradford lad. But we played like Yorkshire junior levels together. There's actually a few of us that played together. So me, Michael Vaughan, Chris Silverwood, a lad called Adil Ditter played, Ian Sutcliffe, who played at Leicestershire.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've forgotten somebody as well. So we were quite a good group of young players within that sort of team.
Yeah.
It was a great experience to actually play at Scarborough for your debut as well, because it's a lot more relaxed place. It'd be like making your debut in Colwyn Bay.
Yeah.
The whole atmosphere of the week's a little bit more relaxed than it would be, whether it be Cardiff or at Headingley or somewhere like that. So I was quite pleased for that.
Yeah, and one of the traditional homes of cricket, from a Yorkshire point of view. Am I right in thinking that Sachin Tendulkar was on the Yorkshire staff around the same time as well?
I wouldn't have a clue what year. I remember bowling at Sachin, but I could have been younger. I could have been like 15, 16. So it might have been around 92, 93 maybe.
Yeah, I think it was 92. Yeah. But he wasn't in the team when you were playing, though.
No. Actually, did we have an overseas in that game? It actually escapes me who actually played in the match, to be fair.
Okay.
Ashley Metcalf played.
Yeah.
Martin Mox played.
Richard Blakey, obviously, who was the keeper.
Richard Blakey, David Byers played. Yeah, I don't think there was an overseas player playing.
Okay. Well, for the next couple of years, then, for 95 and 96, you were in and out of the Yorkshire team, and I know that there was another county very interested in you, saw a lot of potential in you, and obviously with Yorkshire having, as we just mentioned, a battery of other seam bowlers and international players, that other county was Notts. So just talk us through your link with Trent Bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I played against Notts in a Benson Hedges game, because obviously we used to play Benson Hedges games at the start of the season. It could have been the year after, because the ironic thing at Scarborough, when I made my debut, that was when you played a Sunday league game in the middle or after the third day, before the fourth day, and I actually got injured in that game. So which is ironic, that's kind of how things have kind of unfolded over the years for myself. And I ended up having an operation, so I didn't play for the rest of the summer. But then I think it was the following year, I then started off in the team in the 50 over cricket, and we played against Notts at home, of which I actually got Tim Robinson out.
Another umpire.
Another umpire, yeah. And I think I actually got Paul Pollard out as well, who was another umpire.
Yeah.
So I started really well in that game. I couldn't tell you my figures, but I think I got 3 wickets, did really well. And then we went and played at Worcester, I think it was, a couple of days later. But in the meantime, Paul Johnson had made it be known to me that he'd like me to go to Notts. And this was early season, and it's hard to say really, because you know where your loyalties lie, but it's quite a nice thing if somebody's thinking of you. And I couldn't really tell you how that season panned out. I probably got injured or something like that, I don't know. But that could also be the season I actually played against Glamorgan for the first time.
Yeah, we'll come on to 1999 and Colwyn Bay in a minute, but yeah, I know you did play in 98 for Notts against Glamorgan, and I know that there were some innings and some quite hostile bowling performances, as you said, with your swing bowling and in the modern parlance, bowling a heavy ball as well. But who else?
Yeah, but I think I played against Glamorgan at Cardiff for Yorkshire, and I don't know whether that was that same year, because I didn't actually bowl particularly well in the whole game. But I went in as night watchman and I got 60, and I actually remember batting against Steve Watkin.
Yeah, that was 1996. Yeah.
Was that 96? So we obviously a few years. Sorry. I'm jumping forward. See, my memory's gone a little bit strange. But yeah, so Notts had made these kind of inquiries about wanting me to go down and stuff like that, because we didn't have agents or anything like that at that point. And I kind of just said, thanks, thank you very much, but I'm happy where I am. And as things kind of sort of went on, I just wanted to play cricket, and that was my main reason for moving away. And Notts gave me a great opportunity. Obviously, myself and my wife, we were expecting and things like that, and I kind of needed to make a decision in my career. Was I happy to just play when potentially people were just injured or on international duty? And I just chose to leave, and rightly or wrongly, it was the decision I made, and as it's turned out, it was a pretty good decision to make.
Yeah, well, I decision making, Wolfie, is your forte, so I'm not going to question that. There's not going to be anything like that from my end.
Yeah.
But let's just move forward to Colwyn Bay, the summer of 1999. and you were in the Notts team, and you mentioned Steve Watkin a minute ago. Well, that first day of that championship game at Colwyn Bay was like no other. I was working on Radio Wales with Edward Bevan and the late great Don Shepherd up on the embankment at Colwyn Bay in the little tent. For those of you who don't know, that for the commentary and obviously in recent years for all the streaming to take place, we're very grateful to one of the residents in the bungalows behind for giving us access to their telephone lines. And there'd been a few little, I can still remember, there'd been a few little issues in the morning. I think the magic box of communication equipment wasn't quite in the right place. And so we're all a little bit frazzled. And then at 11 o'clock, Steve Watkin ran in and produced a performance which after 50 minutes, Nottinghamshire were 9 for 6. Steve Watkin had taken, I think, 5 for 0. And I can vividly remember it. Well, obviously, it was the early days of mobile phones. Not only was Edward doing something into Radio Cymru news at 12 o'clock, Don Shepherd was doing something into Radio Wales news at 12 o'clock, and then suddenly we get Radio 5 Live ringing up wanting a scoreline as well. So I think I might have made my debut there as well. But from 9 for 6, Alex, you then you led a spirited fight back, and you made 78, and I think it was something like 12 fours, 1 6 at the ground. But it was your forthright, your determined, your sort of never say die attitude with the bat, which caught the eye of Matt Maynard, and as I said, the Glamorgan hierarchy. So what are your memories of that particular innings?
I think I just batted with freedom. It was one of those real games where you'd never ever experienced anything like it, and it doesn't happen very often. Steve Watkin, obviously, he was a fantastic bowler, and I can remember actually Steve Watkin still bowling like that in the nets up until I finished playing. So he's probably still doing it now.
Yeah, and
it was just one of those surreal games. I didn't really have a game plan. It was just a case of just batting. I batted how I batted, and I remember scoring. I think I pulled Steve Watkin for his first runs. I can't remember if it went for 4 or whether it went, just a couple of runs. I don't really know. I always enjoyed sort of being around Glamorgan and stuff like that, and they kind of made, Crofty was playing. Crofty had a few words to say from time to time. I should have got 178, never mind 78. It was just a great game, and I've never ever told anybody this as well. There was a bit of a sideshow as well. Duncan Fletcher was coach. He was leaving to become England coach as well. So it was a thing I wanted to actually impress the cricketing world, if you know what I mean. It was,
yeah.
I knew I had ability, and I knew that potentially, I could go on and play for England. So it was kind of right. It was the right place, right time. Again, as I've just said earlier on, things just work out sometimes.
Yeah, and can I just say on behalf of Steve James, thank you very much for what you did, and also I know Tony Cotty's not in the call, but you probably remember that the following year, the year 2000, when Sussex were at Colwyn Bay, and Grizzly, i.e. Chris Adams, won the toss, and Tony Cotty was in the Sussex team at the time, and Chris Adams, never having been to Colwyn Bay to play cricket before, he might have been there to look at the goats or the sandcastles, but Cott said, a ball went round corners last year. It was 9 for 6 in the first hour. Of course, Glamorgan then are put into bat, and at the end of day one were 378 for 1. and by the middle of the following afternoon were declaring on 718 for 3, and of course Steve James 309 not out. So it's amazing, Alex, you know, not just in terms of your career, but that morning at Colwyn Bay, how it shaped so many people's futures. There's probably a book in there somewhere, so I'll have a think about that. But
just on Steve James, it was so good actually having somebody like Steve James in the team, because every time you won the toss, if Steve James was still batting after 25 minutes, you weren't putting your bowling shoes on that day. You probably weren't even putting your batting pads on. He was that good. Steve James was unbelievable. You know, I mean, obviously, as far as opening batsmen that have played for England, Steve James didn't play enough.
Right.
That's probably all I can say about Steve James. An absolutely unbelievable cricket player, cricket mind, and a good, solid guy as well.
Yeah,
He used to eat a bit too much chocolate, you know.
Yeah,
that's all I'll say.
Life has been quite dreadful for Steve in recent months, and I don't know, Alex, whether you saw the programme about Amy Dowden, the Strictly Come Dancing dancer, the other night, and how brave it was for Steve and his wife to be talking about their personal tragedies of recent times. But I know on behalf of everyone here, we do wish Steve and his family all the very best in the coming weeks during the winter months. But you had the benefit, Alex, of bowling then against some of these Glamorgan legends of the 1990s. You mentioned Steve. There was obviously Matt Maynard as well. But let me just ask a question in terms of the Glamorgan batsmen at that time. Don't forget there was quite a useful little left-handed opening batter as well, who of course is now my chief executive. But in terms of those Glamorgan players, who were the ones you found most difficult to bowl at?
I mean, just in particular, that particular game that I played for Notts at Colwyn Bay. I mean, I think Steve James got 265 or something like that in that game, or 264. Matt got 100. Jack Callis was playing, he got 100. Adrian Dale, one of the best cricketers I've probably ever played with, for, you know, doing a good job with bat and ball, I think he got 0.
Yeah.
So it's funny how things work out. But
and there was Powley as well.
Yeah, and you know, so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to come to Glamorgan as well, because I saw opportunities to play in a great team. They'd won the title in '97. You know, I mean, obviously Fletcher was going. The ironic thing, when I was joining as well, it looked like Hansi Cronje was going to be head coach. And then obviously it unfolded about what had happened to him. So then Jeff Hammond came in. And,
Bomber.
You know, Bomber was only at the club for a few years, but he had a heavy influence on me as a player and me as a person. So I reflect sort of fondly on those guys. You know, you had Darren Thomas, who was a sort of young tearaway who was ripping it up. Michael Powell, Wayne Law was sort of around. You know, I mean, obviously, it didn't kind of work out for Wayne Law, but, you know, the potential was there. Dean Kosker, Robert Croft. You know, there was a nucleus of a really, really good team. And that's obviously why we went on to win a few sort of one-day titles and stuff. And teams do break up and clubs have different visions and things like that. So, but yeah, Matthew Maynard, you know, I remember bowling at Matt at Colwyn Bay, where I just kept running in at him. I sort of never gave up in that match. You know, as I said before, there was different reasons for that. You know, Fletcher, Maynard. I kind of knew that Maynard had seen me before and quite liked me. I kind of, you know, it's funny how things work out, to be fair.
Yeah. So, what are your memories then of, if having decided quite wisely, of course, to move to Glamorgan, the year 2000? An appearance at Lords. There aren't many Glamorgan players who can say that they've represented Glamorgan in a cup final at Lords. You're one of a handful, and against Gloucestershire, who at the time were the best. Well, they were the one-day kings of the of that era. Going back to the 1970s, you would say Lancashire and Kent, but the pendulum had swung to the glorious Gloucesters. But I can remember there was a game, the semi-final, I think I'm right in saying, of the Benson and Hedges at Cardiff, when Surrey came down, and Surrey, of course, strutting their stuff, what people sometimes call the Brown Hatters, a star-studded Surrey team, the Hollyoaks, Bicknell, Thorpe, Alex Stuart. Looking at that team, I can remember sitting in the Radio Wales score box, just doing my prep, getting my pencil sharpened, etc., just looking at the two teams. And here were the Surrey team, international caps, one-day internationals, tests, you name it, coming down to play Glamorgan. Well, of course, we sent them packing. I know the game went into 2 days, but it was a partnership between Matt Maynard and Michael Powell, which began on the first day, carried over into the second day, and then you, together with Owen Park in particular, on the second day, helping to win the game. Your memories of that, Alex?
Phenomenal. It's probably one of the greatest days I've ever had playing the game. 2 days. Especially when we fielded. I mean, obviously you need runs on the board, and the guys did brilliant to do that. But to win a match like that, and you're all together on the field, and you know that everybody's kind of contributed, and you know, as you've said, they were an all-stars team. We had stars, you know, and some very, very big stars, but we were kind of relatively sort of raw. And I think that was almost the beginning of, say, winning one-day leagues and things like that. It was kind of building a bit of a nucleus of a team with some great sort of heads on, some big shoulders, i.e., you know, with people like Maynard, Sid, people like that. Matthew Elliott was instrumental within that team. And I think when you played the Benson and Hedges, because it was early season, you could have a little bit of, you know, you could sort of take your time to get into a tournament or a trophy. It wasn't straight knockout. And I think we beat Hampshire the game before. And we always see, I think where we always did well with the new ball, like knocking over a few people early on. And I think that's kind of what kind of happened in those games. And obviously we got to the final, and because we've probably not been there as a club for a long time, maybe the nerves got the best of us. I mean, Matthew got 100, played really well. I mean, I remember going into bat in that match, and the support was phenomenal. It was unbelievable. And I hit a 4. I didn't get many runs. I think I only got something like 6 or 8 or something like that. But I hit a 4 early on, and the roar was like something I'd never, ever heard. So if you imagine that, if we were all feeling like that, where Gloucester had played in a few sort of bigger games and things like that at that particular time, they knew exactly what they were doing. You know, they all bowled in a certain way. Jack Russell obviously stood up. So they had a real plan. I don't believe that we had a real plan at that point, but it's kind of led into other things later on. But it was a great day. We had a fantastic night as a team. You know, we kind of celebrated the fact that, look, we've done a big achievement this year, even though we didn't win it. It was great to actually see the fans that were with us. You know, I remember sort of being in the hotel bar for hours and hours. We sat with people from North Wales, and it was just fantastic. You know.
Yeah, I can remember straight after the victory in the semi-final against Surrey at Cardiff, Tony Dillaway, the commercial executive, had already produced some yellow T-shirts, Daffodil Day 2000, and my abiding memory of the celebrations after the game at Cardiff, the semi-final, was everyone walking around, you know, wow, we've done it. You know, it was 1977 all over again. It was of course, we'd won the Sunday League in '93, and there was but here we were with a team of a decent homegrown team, the team that had obviously many components we'd won the championship, and now we were going to put it to right at Lords, but it wasn't to be. And I suppose then you did the following year. I think there was a lot of expectation. 2001, we did the way the National League, the Sunday League, was organised. Then it was in 2 divisions, and in 2001 we won Division 2, and then in 2002 we won Division 1. I don't think any other team has done that. And I'm not quite sure with the new structures that we're seeing whether there will be a 2-divisional structure to the List A games in the future. But those, whilst we were winning in 2002 under Steve James, although it was Crofty who led the team in the final game at Canterbury, when we had another moment, a Canterbury tale, as it were. But for you personally, Alex, those 2 years, 2001 and 2002, I know you had a heel injury that was causing you discomfort. How frustrating was it for you, having tasted the success, to now be limited to in your?
Just going back to the whole Colwyn Bay thing in the Sussex match, I'd been carrying this heel ankle injury leading up to that game, and this is my relationship that I had with Matthew Maynard. He said to me, "Look, just keep going, and we'll rest you after this." And the ironic thing was, I then subsequently, that injury kind of curtailed 2 seasons after that, because I actually had to have operations on my ankle. I thought my career was over, if truth be known, because I had an operation, a lengthy sort of pre-season, should we say, to try and get back. I'd had an osteogomus bone removed from my ankle or something like that, which is like a growth bone. I had that removed, and then as it turned out, after a long layoff, I still had the same problem. So I then had to go back under the knife, and then they shaved my calcaneum, I think it was called, which is like your heel bone. And then obviously after, cricket seasons are quite short, really, 6 months. So you kind of miss big chunks. So I missed 2 years. I thought my career was going to be over. In fairness to Glamorgan, they stuck by me. They were brilliant. Mike Fatkin was the chief executive, who, what a guy that man is. I've got so much respect for him. Sadly, he's not at the club anymore. That's a different story. But yeah, the club were brilliant, and they really looked after me. They got me through. Obviously, the team was doing well. I was disappointed not to be involved, but to be at a club that's winning, great. There's people getting selected for England as well at that particular point. So the club's in a good position. Just unfortunately, I was on the bed again. That's just the way it is.
But things then came good in 2004, and you were able to play quite a major role in Glamorgan's success in the One-Day League that year under Captain Robert Croft. And there were, from my own point of view as the Glamorgan stato, there were 2 performances with the ball that stood out that summer. The game against Warwickshire, I think they were still the Warwickshire, not the Warwickshire Bears or the Birmingham Bears, but there was the game at Edgbaston in 2004 when you took a hat-trick, and then there was a remarkable game against Kent, Cardiff, when you took 6 for 5. Let's talk about the hat-trick first of all. What can you remember about the game at Edgbaston?
It's kind of strange, really, because obviously Edward Bevan used to follow us around, obviously doing BBC Radio Wales, obviously Don Shepherd. And Edward gave me the commentary from the radio as that actually sort of happened. I used to like bowling at the end. I used to like bowling at the end of an innings and the death and stuff like that. One, because I knew I could do it, but two, I used to think, well, there's a chance for a few wickets here. That's, kind of what you think sometimes. And I just got lucky. I think Nick Knight, he batted quite a long time, I think, and I think he just sort of, tried to play one of his shots. He sort of got caught, and then I got Graham Wagg out, I think.
Yeah.
I sort of bowled a short ball at him and his bat broke and he got caught. And then I just bowled a slower ball the last wicket, and I think it was somebody called Pretorius or something like that. And he just missed it. He just missed it and got bowled. And I think that was the end of the game as well. I think just a bit of luck. I think at that particular point, I was at the top of my game, if you know what I mean. It was, things were working really well for me. I felt fit. We were doing well as a team. I could always get up for one-day cricket. 4-day cricket was sometimes a challenge for me. I'm obviously kind of a big guy, and I found that tough from time to time. If my body wasn't feeling totally right, it was difficult. But people backed me. I had John Derrick, he was instrumental in my career as well, where they really backed me. Crofty backed me. People like Don Shepherd, who had a massive influence within the club. People would always ask his advice. He'd always be out there as well when you were in the middle and stuff, and people would, you'd ask him what he thought, and things were just going really well. And I think at that point, I don't know about being unstoppable, but I pretty much felt that way.
Yeah. If I just ask you then about the 6 for 5 against Kent at Cardiff.
We lost that game.
Yeah, I think that was the game when Adrian Dale got hit by was it Butler of the New Zealander?
Yeah, that was Adrian Dale's last delivery in professional cricket.
Yeah, and
sadly.
I know a couple of years before, Steve Watkin had the honour of bowling the final over of his illustrious career against Middlesex, and I can remember Adrian Dale bowled the first. I've got a feeling the first 5 balls of that over were dot balls, and then I think he went for.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. And he went for the block hole ball to Ian Butler. I think Ian Butler's got a career average of 1.67 or something like that. And I can't remember, it might have been Tony Clarkson who was the umpire at Adrian's end. Adrian then tried to go for a block hole ball, and put it this way, the ball was found on the roof of Sport Wales the following morning. Tony Clarkson signaling a 6, and I know Tony Clarkson told me later that Matthew Fleming, the Kent captain and non-striker, actually said, which probably made him feel a lot better, crikey, or words to that effect, crikey, I've never seen Butler hit the ball before. Anyway, let's talk about your 6 for 5. I know it's a team game, but there aren't many Glamorgan players who've taken 6 for 5. Don Shepherd, of course.
Don Shepherd, probably, yeah. I think Darren Thomas took 7 for not too many.
Yeah.
I'd actually been picked for England. So I'd already been picked for England. I'd been picked for England when we were up in Colwyn Bay.
Yeah.
So me and a few of the guys, we went out for a couple of beers in Colwyn Bay to celebrate. And then we went back down to Cardiff. I'm not sure if we'd won. I was thinking we'd won the title in Colwyn Bay.
We beat Lancashire, and we won it for 3 games to spare. And then there were no Sky cameras at Colwyn Bay or TV, so it was then, I think, the game against Warwickshire at the end of the season was the formal presentation, and that was when quite a few people let their hair down for the second time. I remember the Colwyn Bay thing is actually there was a championship game after the Lancashire game. So the Lancashire game, and then played a championship game, of which I got selected for
England during that game or just before. And obviously, John Derrick said, look, I don't think you should play this game. Play the one-day game when we get back down to Cardiff, and then you'll go away. You don't need to pick up an injury. That's what John Derrick was like, you know, salt of the earth, great guy. And that's what happened. So a few of us went out for a couple of drinks. We went back down to Cardiff, played that game. I don't really know how I got 6 for 5. I couldn't honestly tell you. I was just ecstatic that I was going up to represent England. You know, I was disappointed we lost the game, but I saw the funny side of it. You know, it was Daly's last ever delivery. They needed 6 off the last ball. He's gone for 6.
Yeah,
we were a real tight unit. Lots of friendships. Lots of battles from time to time. We'd play rugby for a game, and we'd be having a bit of a scuffle every now and then and a bit of a rub, but we were good mates. We were really, really good mates at that particular time in my time at Glamorgan. Yeah, we were great teammates.
And of course, a few weeks later, also Glamorgan had already beaten Warwickshire in the quarterfinal of the T20. And in 2004, that the first Saturday, I think, of September, off to Edgbaston to play the Leicestershire Foxes. Let's talk about T20 cricket, because obviously your career now as an umpire, you've stood in many games in the short format. But as a player, your take then on T20 cricket?
I think it's fantastic. Look, I love all forms. I can sit here, and I'm sure there's everybody on this call. We're probably all test match purists, but it doesn't mean that we can't enjoy T20, 50 over cricket.
Yeah.
Obviously we might talk later about the 100 coming up and something like that.
Brilliant. Great.
As long as the game is thriving, so be it. It's great. Obviously when I was playing sort of T20 cricket, it was relatively early. It was kind of a bit of a new concept. And, when I first started playing the first year, we rested players. We didn't all play. We didn't, we saw it as an opportunity to rest guys for one-day cricket or for championship cricket. Yeah. Where look how different it is now. Players in theory just want to, they want to get up for the T20 cricket, and that's kind of what they want to do. And it's probably understandable. That's where the money is for these players, And
yeah,
it is a good concept. The way the ECB run things regarding the blast and stuff like that, it's second to none.
Yeah, it is a good product. And going back to 2004, the game against Leicestershire Foxes, I don't think that was our finest hour. We did have another opportunity in 2007. I can remember when we went up on that luxury coach up and back to Durham to test in the street. That was quite an experience, just the journey itself. But I think you're right. Glamorgan maybe had that final come a few years later, or that semi-final, I should say, had that semi-final come a few years later, we would have had a game plan, we would have adapted. But for you, Alex, September 2004 was a landmark month for you, because you made your England ODI debut at Trent Bridge, back on one of your old stamping grounds, and on debut, a man of the match performance. Figures of 8 overs, no maidens, 3 for 30. I know you've been wanting to tell us since we started over an hour ago.
I think you should tell us, because it's embarrassing for me.
Go on, Wharfie. You say.
Well, the ironic thing is, I suppose, I obviously got selected for England, and it was great. I mean, you should have seen the amount of kit that I found in my room when I got to my hotel room. There was boxes of kit, and it's like Christmas, it's unreal. It's just a huge sort of pat on the back, for tough times, like the injuries and stuff like that. And, and so obviously to play and then to get a wicket in my first over. And I don't know. It's just so surreal. It's, you know, I mean, you want me to say so? I got Ganguly out, and then I think I got Dravid out next, and then I think I got Laxman out the next wicket in that order. I mean, the ironic thing is, Ganguly came and played, obviously for a little bit of time with us, and he was a fantastic character. We spent a lot of time together, me and Surav families, Matthew Elliott and his families, Mark Wallace, you know, and got to know him really well. And, you know, for somebody like that to, you know, they call him the Prince for a reason. You know, he lives in a 72-bedroom house or something like that. And as you can see now, he's like the king of BCCI. And
yeah,
it was great, you know, and I'm just so thankful that I had the opportunity to represent my country. You know, that's all I can say, even though I represented Wales before England.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, of course, in those years, 2002, 2003, 2004, we also had the Wales v England games, and I suppose performances for Wales helped to showcase your abilities as well, Alex.
Well, I got injured before the first one.
Yeah.
I tripped on a ball in the morning, went over on my ankle, and then I played in the second one. And I think I didn't get many runs or wickets, but apparently Rob Key went back to the dressing room and said that's the quickest bowler he's faced this year, you know, and so that was kind of another sort of notch in the,
yeah,
you know, something, you know, if he's saying that to Duncan Fletcher, people like Matthew Maynard are saying similar things, you know. It's all about luck. You need a little bit of luck, and you know, that day when I made my debut, I had a little bit of luck, you know.
Yeah, and to spare your blushes, the England lineup for that game at Trent Bridge, the bowling lineup, Darren Gough, Steve Harmison, Andrew Flintoff, Alex Wharf, Ashley Giles, and Paul Collingwood. Not a bad, you know, not the Fab Five, but six there. Obviously, you were the one out of those six who didn't then play the following summer in the 05. Simon Jones in a memorable test series for England and, of course, for Wales. But before all of that, you were on the winter tour, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. What was it like then, representing England (brackets) and Wales on foreign shores?
I mean, to go on tour, any tour with your country and doing the things you love to do, it's, you know, it's a pretty honourable thing, and you know, I just loved it and I embraced it. I played against Zimbabwe, had a good sort of series against them. Played the games against Namibia. I can't really particularly remember what kind of happened. You know, we were just probably playing more squad sort of games at that point. And then South Africa, I played the last two games. You know, so maybe there were a little bit of a change in the guard. You know, I was very hopeful for the next summer. We came back. I think at that point they just started these contracts where, like a one-day contract and test match contracts and stuff. And I think I got like I can't remember what it was called at the time. I think it might have been called an incremental contract or something like that. So I was in the thoughts. And then I got injured. I pulled aside, which then kept me out of the Australia ODI series, which pretty much ended all possibilities of probably playing for England ever again, because, you know, there was a lot of good bowlers around at that time. You know, I was 29, 30. You know, you don't get too many opportunities at that age. And my body just kept letting me down. And, you know, that's the kind of the hardest thing about looking back on my own career is it's tough out there. It is tough. And sometimes maybe you should wrap yourself up in cotton wool a little bit more than you do. But, you know, it is what it is. I mean, look at Simon Jones, you know, phenomenal bowler, you know, and he's had his fair share. And, you know, I've been lucky enough to actually be on the field with Simon Jones and actually see him in his pomp doing what he was capable of doing. And, you know, it's like beauty, you know, seeing somebody like that who can just bowl so fast, so naturally, you
Mm.
know, and it's just a shame that he carried so many injuries as well.
Yeah, and of course, when I went through that lineup, of course, there was Matthew Hoggard as well. So you had a pace battery there of people reaching their peak as well. And as you said, with your injuries, it wasn't to be, but you did. So you'd played I think your 13th and final appearance for England was in February 05 against South Africa at Centurion. But then in the winter of 05-06, I think I'm right in saying that you did get another opportunity to tour the West Indies with England A. But or were injuries then still playing a role?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of struggle, you know, I struggle with injuries. Not to say for a minute that I would have ever been involved in that Ashes Test series, because those guys that brought the Ashes home that summer it was just unbelievable. Even as a cricket fan, to actually see what went on that summer was unbelievable. But yeah, so I sort of went, you know, to the academy and stuff and trained most of the winter of that winter you've just mentioned. I was due to go to Pakistan for an ODI series, but unfortunately didn't go. And then went to the West Indies tour, and it just didn't work out. You know, that's the way it was. Peter Moores ran the tour, gave me some great opportunities. I stood on a ball someone drilled a ball back in the first Test match, and I stood on it. So I was off the field for the rest of the game. I then played the second Test match. I probably shouldn't have done, and I kept sort of trying to push through these injuries, and it just didn't work out. And that was it, really. I came back after that. I had a real sort of good think about my career and stuff. Still had that desire to play, but it was only flickering. And then once you kind of give up the ghost of playing for your country or representing your country anymore, it becomes difficult then. It really does.
Yeah. Well, let's not forget that in 2007, we've talked a lot about your bowling, but in 2007, I can still remember this innings as if it were yesterday, against Gloucestershire at Bristol, an unbeaten 128, which I think was your career best. Have you got any recollections of that?
Yeah, it was
a cloudy day at Bristol and the ball around. Yeah,
it was a difficult sort of pitch, and I think that, you know, I just sort of chanced my arm a little bit, and it kind of worked out. And at that point, because I knew my body was kind of failing me, I kind of had to work on my batting a little bit more, or not work on it, but just have a better understanding of it. And I think that's, you know, that season probably, I don't know if that was my best season with the bat, but, you know, my game was changing. You know, I couldn't just run in and bowl and that was it. I had to sort of like knuckle down. Maybe I should have done it sooner in my career, because who knows what might happen at that point. But yeah, it was a difficult pitch. I just knew my scoring areas and kind of went for that, and, you know, just enjoyed it, really.
Yeah, it clicked.
I used to enjoy batting. I really did.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah. Well, 2009, then a Glamorgan benefit. Your final games in first class and list A, and also in T20 cricket. So you ended up with 3,570 first class runs, 293 first class wickets, nearly 1,500 runs in white ball cricket, and over 230 wickets in list A and also in T20 combined. I suppose, Alex, just before we move on to your career as an umpire, there is a question that's come in from Hal Williams. Do you think you would have had as much success had you taken up the offer then to go pro football with Sheffield United, do you think? I mean, everyone would love to pull on the Three Lions jersey, but do you think you would have been an international footballer, but you have at least tasted international cricket?
I obviously chose cricket for a reason, and whether when I was a kid, I played cricket every night. I only played football once, maybe twice a week, and that was it. And I chose cricket because I loved the sport more than I loved football. I wouldn't really change much, I might knuckle down a little bit more looking back and stuff like that, but I'd have chosen cricket every single day of the week because, I'm still involved in the game heavily now, and it's obviously been the right choice.
Yeah. Well, let's focus now on the second and final part of the talk on your career now in the. I was going to say in the white coat, but of course there are times when you don't have to wear the coats. But why umpiring, Alex? What was it, or what is it about your new role? What is it about umpiring that appealed to you? No pun intended, I hasten to add.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really sort of study at school. I left school just with GCSEs. I didn't do A levels, didn't go to university. Never really had a backup plan of what I wanted to do if cricket failed or sport failed. Just basically went with it, as most people probably did in my sort of career and age. And it's towards the end of my career. It was actually when I was umpire. Sorry, when I was playing, and I went on tour in Zimbabwe tour, and I just got talking to a couple of the umpires that had come down to the nets. The day before, an ODI, umpires tend to go to nets and just have a bit and get to know a couple of people, stand and sort of watch. And I just got speaking to them and kind of almost ignited a bit of a, I was quite inquisitive about it, thinking that sounds like pretty good stuff. And, it'd be quite a nice way to spend your life, still involved in the game, traveling the world, perhaps, all those types of things. So then when I came back home, I started talking to people I knew that I'd played with, like Peter Hartley, maybe Neil Mallender, people like that. Ian Gould I spoke to, and just asking questions about umpiring. And so at that point then, I wanted to stay in the game, didn't really want to coach, saw that too cutthroat and, people lose their jobs left, right and centre. And, I kind of picked umpiring because I saw a great opportunity to sort of like do something more with umpiring than I ever did with my playing career. I want to be a test match umpire, and, you can sort of see those goals and, working with someone like a Chris Kelly from the ECB who can push you all the way and, give you opportunities. And, you're working in a high performance, sport, career, whatever it may be. And I just saw those opportunities and thought, yeah, I'm going to do it, and never really looked back, to be honest.
Yeah. For the people on the call who don't know, Chris Kelly may not necessarily be a name that rings bells with some people. But Chris, again, a former schoolmaster, and I think he taught a little bit of geography and history, also a first-class umpire for a short period, then became the ECB umpires manager. And one of the perks of my job, not just as Glamorgan scorer, but I'm chairman of the First Class Scorers Association. And one of the perks is actually being able to go along to meetings and also being asked by Chris about certain people, just quietly, what you think, people who are on that emerging list. And I can remember, Alex, I'll spare your blushes, but I can remember, I think it was in 2010 that you'd said to me, he goes, I'm doing my umpiring exams. Can I come and sit at the back of the score box? And in those days, rather than being alongside the pavilion at Sophia Gardens, we were up in the media centre alongside the Sky commentary box and the Radio Wales box on an elevated plinth. And I can remember very early on, I think it was Barry Leadbeater being the umpire, and you said, "Higgers, what's he doing?" And his hand was flapping. The ball had hit the batter on the pads. And I said, "Alex, that's a pre-signal." And he said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, just watch." And of course, it's something you as a player would never have seen. As a bowler, as a fielder, you wouldn't have seen it. But obviously, where we are in our vantage point, it's a brilliant way of just tipping us off, letting us know that there's going to be a signal for a leg by. Obviously, with a no ball or a wide, your signals are clear. But it is very easy sometimes, especially on outgrounds when you're scoring at ground level, you're not looking down. You can't necessarily pick up the deflection off the pad, but to see the umpire's hand flapping, and I can remember you made a note of that, and I did get an email back from Chris Kelly saying, "Andrew, thank you very much for telling Alex about pre-signal." And then I think you had your other portfolios to do, and it was no surprise. It was no surprise then in 2011. In 2011, you made it onto what was known then as the reserve list. I think the phrase now is all umpires, but back then it was a reserve list. If I've done my homework right, I've got a feeling that your first class game could not have been further away from your home in South Wales. I think you were living in Caerphilly at the time, and you had to go some way to stand in a game. Was it Durham against Durham MCCU at?
No, you slightly. Was that my first class game? No, it was. Yes, no, you're right. That was my first class game, but my first ever championship game. Do you remember what game that was?
Go on.
So it was the same. So I'd gone to do the first game, racecourse ground, Durham versus Durham University, or Durham University versus Durham County Cricket Club. And then I got called in to do a game, which was a day-night, 4-day game
at Canterbury.
With a pink ball at Canterbury. Nigel Cowley had gone down ill.
Yeah.
And I drove from home to Canterbury and then stood on the field for the last two sessions of the day, because I think the game start something like 2:30 or something like that?
Yeah, it was with very short notice. It was a pink ball trial and what have you, and
yeah,
I think we actually had four umpires that day. On the first, it was day one.
Right.
Nigel wasn't feeling very well, and day two, I think he started but couldn't carry on. Someone else came. There was a chap so there was a local chap in the ground who stood at square leg. Then there was a Kent League guy called Chris Dale, who'd played a little bit for Kent and a little bit for Gloucester, came and stood until you'd arrived. I'm desperately trying to think, was it Martin Bodnam was the other umpire?
Martin Bodnam, yes.
Yeah. And then I won't repeat what it was, but I can remember when you've certainly got a certain presence when you walk on the field, and as I think most people on the call know, that the on-field umpires are in contact with the scorers by walkie-talkie, and as you walked on, Martin did let it be known to myself and Jack, the Kent scorer, how grateful he was, because of course with the illness he was having to stand at both ends, at the bowler's end, and he wasn't going over to square. I'm not saying grazing at square leg, but I'm sure everyone knows what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I do remember that. Stuart Walters got 100 in the game.
He got a big 100. I think he got something like 165 or something like that.
Yeah. But
he actually in that particular match, he just looked like an overseas player.
Yes.
He played unbelievable. I mean, how many years did he have at the club? 3?
4, I think it was.
4 years. 4 years. He looked unbelievable that game, and Glamorgan have had some fine players play for them. You know, it hasn't worked out for every individual, but you know, they've had some fine players. And long may that continue, to be honest.
Yeah, quite right, quite right. But yeah, that was a remarkable game, and obviously there were people who assess you. There's a gentleman called Paul Adams, who's Chris Kelly's number two, as it were, who will sit incognito in the crowd and will watch. There's a lovely phrase. I know there's quite a few South Wales League umpires. There's a phrase, fieldcraft, and clearly all of that was going well. And then in 2013, you made it onto the full-time list, and you haven't looked back. But in 2013 as well, clearly your star was in the ascent, Alex, because I think I'm right in saying that you also had a little visit over to Holland to stand in a Tri-Nations series, Holland and Ireland. So your first taste of international umpiring in your first year on the full list. You laughed then when I said a little taste in Holland.
Yeah, no, yeah, because people could take that the wrong way. Because, no, as I've sort of said, you know, just going back to the whole Chris Kelly thing, you know, working for the ECB, it's high performance, and they want high performance in every department, you know. And if you show willing and, you know, you're obviously reasonably good, and you want to, you know, you've got that desire to try and do things and move on and be a part of sort of the history of the sport, I suppose. I mean, you've only got to look at what's happened with COVID this year, and you know how the ECB have put those international fixtures on show. You know, general normal people. Steve Elworthy, obviously, he's an ex-international cricketer. You know, and he's getting mentioned all the time in the press. So the ECB support people that are willing to go the extra mile, you know. And, you know, as I say, it's high performance. Chris Kelly backed me. He gave me every opportunity, you know, he possibly could do, because he believed in me and he believes in other people. And, you know, I went to Holland and that was great, you know. And as you say, you get a little taste. You want to go back and you want to do it a little bit higher of standard, and, you know, it's just good.
Well, 2015, you had a taste then of Ashes cricket. No finer place, Lords. You were fourth umpire, which, just so everyone's clear, there's obviously the two on-field umpires. Third umpire, sometimes known as the TV umpire, looking at the replays. We'll come back to that in a minute. But fourth umpire, I suppose it's the less glamorous bit. When it rains, you're out there with a brolly. When the light's bad, you're out there. But what, just to fill us all in, what are the duties of a fourth umpire?
Your duties are basically to support the rest of the crew, really. You know, the rest of the PCT. You know, look after the on-field umpires, look after the third umpire, the match referee. You know, making sure the pitch is being well taken care of, nobody's doing something they possibly shouldn't do. The cutting of the pitch, you're looking after the balls. You go in to see the teams every now and then. You know, you get people to pick the balls. You find out when somebody's off the field, how long they're off the field for, why they're off the field, when they're going back. All the things just to take the pressure off the rest of the team. You know, and that's another thing where somebody could do that job and just think it's a bit of a jolly and, you know, enjoy 5 days at Lords and stuff like that. But, you know, I want to do my job the best I possibly can. And some people will say certain things to you that probably aren't repeatable. But at the end of the day, you know, you're just doing your job. And, you know, you've got to watch these commentators, they're wanting to get all over the pitch and stuff like that, and you've got to be strong and firm and say, look, mate, you can't do that.
Yeah. And you also stood in an England women's test, England Australia. We just mentioned St Lawrence Canterbury, but that was where where you stood in your first women's game. You also then that winter got a chance to umpire in domestic cricket in India. The ECB, I think I'm right in saying, have a policy of exchange umpires. So we've had a series of West Indian and Indian umpires come over, and you were lucky enough to go out there, as I say, in 2015, 2016. How different as an environment to umpire in was it for you?
Yeah, it's a lot different. I mean, obviously, just culturally, it's so different. But the way the game's played, see, when you go to India as well, because it's such a vast place, it's kind of almost like it's run like a little bit like a smaller test match, if you know what I mean. There's there's a group of umpires that go. There's a match referee. The games are streamed. This is obviously a lot way before we were streaming games. And obviously the test match regulations, everything like that's played. But to have the opportunity to travel to a country like India, and to umpire your first game there, and Sehwag's captain of one of the teams, it's kind of special. It's kind of that you're on the right track at that point as well. The first pitch I went and umpired on is in a place called Lali, which is about 2.5 hours north of Delhi by car. It was like a bit of a green seamer, so it was like a slow seamer. And then the second game, it was the last game before the knockouts, and it was in Indore, which is like pretty central of India. And it was a pitch they'd used the week before. They'd not done anything to it other than what looked like scarified it. And the first over was bowled at my end, was a left arm spinner, came on, bowled this ball, which spun and bounced, unbelievably, and the game was over in like 2 days. That was kind of the India I probably expected. But yeah, it's just fantastic. It's just any experience in life where you can go and embrace somebody else's culture. It can only make you a better person and sort of fulfill every dream you've probably ever had,
Yeah. And you also, in a couple of years ago, had an opportunity to umpire in the Bangladesh Premier League in the T20. We said earlier that we've got a very good T20 package in this country. What's the T20 package like in Bangladesh?
It's full on. It is full on. Yeah, it's
Sweet Caroline and high hos and all the rest.
No, you've just got beating of drums and vuvuzelas, and it's loud. It's such a loud place. Is Bangladesh. The people are lovely. They can't do enough for you. It's a fantastic place, fantastic country. If anybody gets the opportunity to go, please do go. Yeah, it's just those experiences you could never ever, unless you go, I could never explain it to you. I can show you photographs, I can kind of talk to you, but you would never understand how loud a place is. But yeah, I mean, the competition, it's sort of run over 6 weeks. It's cricket nearly every day. If you're not got cricket, you're travelling to somewhere else. You might have 2 days off. It's fantastic, and I was lucky enough. I did the final, which was a great experience in itself. You see some fantastic players that play all around the world. Warner and Smith actually played in that tournament because they were banned from international cricket. So they were there. They did leave reasonably early, but they were there. So I umpired games that they were both captaining. You kind of just get these, you see these stars, people like Alex Hales are playing and stuff like that. So there's a few sort of faces you kind of know, but you're getting to meet people and getting into that next player, without being too sort of rude.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's from my point of view regarding the 100 coming up, I can't wait for the 100 to start. You know, it's just going to revolutionise the game within our country, you know, and it'll have a drip down effect to the next, you know, to the Blast and stuff like that, and county cricket, and I just can't wait for it to start, to be honest.
Yeah, and you know, the thrill of seeing here in Cardiff, Steve Smith, Mitchell Stark, and all the marquee names running out for Welsh Fire, and also to see some of the finest women's players as well. We've been lucky enough to have an occasional women's international at Cardiff, but to see the best in the world over a 6-week period. I obviously don't know how the fixtures are going to fall down. I don't think anyone does at the moment. But if the horrible COVID-19 clears up, if the vaccine comes in, and we life is returning back to a new normal, then it's going to be well worth the wait. Let's just talk about. I want to talk about this summer just gone, but I just want to go back, Alex, to 2018 when I showed you the picture earlier, your international debut. How proud were you that it was on here at your adopted home at Sophia Gardens, a ground that you knew, although it may have looked quite different during the bulk of your playing career, but to be on Glamorgan soil when you were now making your international debut out in the middle as an umpire. How did that feel?
It just made it all the more sweeter. You know, well-wishers, people like that, people I knew that were sort of sat in the crowd as we walked out, and it was just unbelievable. I mean, to do it anyway is fantastic, but to actually do it somewhere that I've got so many fond memories of that ground. You know, just being part of that club's history. Yeah, and to actually stand in a one-day international, England, Australia, no bigger than that.
Exactly.
There was just so fitting, and you know, my family were there and lots of friends and stuff like that. So yeah, it couldn't have been any better, and you know, I'd do it all again.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's going to be many more opportunities further on down the line. But let's just before we go through some of the other questions which have come in advance, and if I could just say to the people on the call, if there are any additional questions, then please feel free to send them in via chat. But let's just finish off by reflecting on the summer that will never be forgotten, the summer that will always be remembered as maybe the summer which wasn't. But you mentioned earlier on about the outstanding work that Steve Elworthy, other ECB officials did in actually getting the international cricket on, and also the domestic games. Without playing any international cricket, I read a few things in the newspapers. It was a doomsday scenario for the game as a whole, not just for the counties. But you were part of it. You were the fourth umpire at the bubbles at the Ageas Bowl and Old Trafford for the series against West Indies. You stood in the ODI series against Ireland and also against Australia. It goes without saying it was very different. At the end of the day, it's still a game between bat and ball, but purely from an umpiring point of view, no, you're not a clothes horse anymore with all the sweaters, etc. But what were your reflections on the summer?
Oh, I mean, Tom Harrison, obviously the chief executive of the ECB, you know, and the team around getting these games on, just phenomenal. It's for, you know, from early on having Skype and Zoom and all these sort of calls and listening to people like Tom Harrison just talking about how the ECB are going to succeed. They are going to make these things happen. And as it's turned out, unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And You know, I just felt when I first got a phone call about the chances of being involved this summer. So I went up for the warm-up games for the West Indies. So they were here maybe for about a month, give or take, before the first Test match. And both myself and Michael Goff went and stood in their warm-up games and things like that. And I just felt privileged to be able to do that, to do what I felt was my duty to the game. You know, it was just a fantastic opportunity to, you know, as you said, it'll go down in history what's happened this summer. You know, and I just felt privileged to the game, and I hope that's what people genuinely believe and see, that all those involved, that's exactly what they've done. You know, they just wanted to make the game stay around forever and ever. And, you know, next year might just be as difficult, and I'd do it all again because, you know, this summer was unbelievable, even though it was different and it was strange. There was no crowd, and it was quite hard from time to time. You know, just sat in your room, you can't go out of the ground, you can't do things you would normally do. But I would do it all again, Higgers.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Alex. And I know in a normal season, whatever that word normal means, that by the time the internationals come round in the middle of May, you would have stood in, let's say, possibly 4, 5, 6 rounds of championship matches. There'd been the List A games. There may have been an MCCU game or something like that. And you're honing your craft. But here, you went almost from 0 to penthouse in 30 seconds. How difficult did you find it to come off the back of a very long off season straight into televised matches?
I tried not to use anything as an excuse. I tried not to dwell on those things. I tried to see the positives in that, you know, that basically all I had to concentrate on was those games, was the one-day internationals, you know, getting to know the regulations inside out. And I tried to look at it from that point of view. You know, there was difficult moments within the summer, you know, I won't lie to you, but I didn't want to leave. No excuses. There's no excuses. Maybe that's something I've learned from being a player, that, you know, it's too easy to make an excuse, you know, that an injury or, you know, a captain's not picked you or whatever it may be. I ain't got time for them anymore.
Yeah.
That might sound a bit of a cliche or something like that, but I don't want to make excuses. If I get a decision wrong, I've got it wrong because of I didn't judge it correctly. It wasn't because I've not had a game for 2 weeks or something like that. And there was lots of us in that same boat. You know, I think the test match guys, you know, Illingworth, Kettleborough, Goff were phenomenal this summer. You know, under extreme scrutiny, there's no test matches going on around the world. You know, everybody's watching, everybody's got an opinion. You know, I just think it's just been, as I said earlier on, phenomenal summer. The ECB should be very proud. All those involved should be very proud. The county game, people that have tuned in and watched live streams or listened to radios, read newspaper articles, we've all had a massive part to play, and hopefully it won't be like this next year. But if it is, we know we can do it again.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, I've got a feeling that we're going to be starting next year. You know, hopefully there won't be as many restrictions, but it's been great. Again, I've been part of the development team purely on the scoring software, and spending the last 2.5 years, 2.5 winters, working with people out in New Zealand, working for an organisation called NV, who have helped to put together the streams, the video footage, working in with the analysts like Chris Hardy here at Glamorgan, and it's been really fulfilling to actually see now all these components come together. And I think the stream that we have here, or we have had here at Glamorgan, has been one of the best on the county circuit. And I know from talking with other cricket supporters in other fora, the comments about the Glamorgan coverage has been excellent. And I think that's something that we can take forward and we can bolt on, and we can improve our game moving forward. We've got quite a few questions in the last 20 minutes. We'll go to the questions first of all that came in advance. Quite a few people have asked about the role of technology, and I guess when your career started as a player, there was a little bit of technology, but now it's there, it's part of the game. So Alex, your take on the technology in the modern game?
I think it's fantastic, to be honest. I think it brings the drama into the living room. It gives people an opportunity to actually probably learn and have a little bit more feeling with the game. I mean, VAR in football is obviously slightly different. I don't think that's as personal, but I think DRS in cricket is a lot more personal. The fans that can watch the game have a little bit more understanding. You know, they'll see a little bit of a deflection, say, for a caught behind, and they'll think, oh yeah, he's definitely hit it. But then once you go through to, you know, ultra edge and things like that, it's slightly different, or they'll have an opinion on an LBW decision. You know, I just think it's added a lot more drama. Obviously, you know, as far as the game goes on field, you know, the last thing you want to do is have an influence as an umpire by, you know, having a decision, you know, making a wrong decision that influences the outcome of the match. Hopefully with DRS, that doesn't happen because teams have referrals. Hopefully they haven't wasted them. So I just think it's great for the game. You know, it can be quite challenging at times if you've got to overturn a decision, but that's just part of the game. You've got to understand that, you know, you're just there doing a job and you're doing it to the best of your ability. But yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's fantastic to you mentioned him a few minutes ago, but to see Michael Goff as one of now and Richard Kettleborough and English umpires, absolutely the top of their game. And I had to laugh. I was listening to a podcast a couple of nights ago. Someone was asking what Michael Goff, what was the secret of his success? Was it having lots of carrots and whatever? And he said, no, I just make sure my eyes are nice and clear, and I've cleaned my ears, you know, with the old cotton buds. Have you got any special secrets you want to share with us, Alex?
A good night's sleep,
yeah,
is crucial. Always crucial. It might not always happen, but try and have a good night's sleep. Obviously, try and have a good diet. You know, diets, you know, you've got to be out on the field a long time. So eating healthily, all those things that we probably should have done a lot, you know, before, but we might not have done. A good fitness, you know, you've got to be fit.
Yeah. Have you?
You know, and as Michael's probably said, good eyesight, good hearing.
Yeah.
You know, and you've just got to be totally brutally honest with yourself.
Have you mentioned diet there? Has your diet changed since you've finished playing?
Yeah, so about coming up to 9 years ago now, I started eating a plant-based lifestyle, so what you would call vegan, and that was purely because I watched a documentary online and thought, I can't eat another animal. That was just part of it. And, you know, 9 years next month, you know, so it's quite a long time. And has it helped? Probably. I probably eat a lot more fruits and vegetables. So I take care of what I eat. Obviously, that can become quite challenging, though, when you're in different parts of the world or different cricket grounds. But at the end of the day, you probably know that you're not going to starve. You just choose wisely and away you go.
And fluid intake?
Yeah, fluid intake. That's a difficult one, actually. Fluid intake, because you're always dying to go to the toilet, but obviously it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, I suppose in a way, the modern day umpire, we actually do go for toilet breaks a little bit more. We'll run off at drinks and stuff like that, but it's not always as easy.
Yeah, I know when I was teaching, I would always encourage the young ladies and gentlemen in my charge, if they had an opportunity to go into an exam with a bottle of water. And there is a school of thought that says that water helps your, if you hydrate, it helps your concentration. Is that right from your point of view as well?
Yeah, hydration is massive for concentration, and not necessarily just water. Basically, almost like a diarrhea is good. Things like that. They've got a bit of sugar, a bit of salt. That type of thing. They're very good. But yeah, just a good diet, stay hydrated. That's one thing that I don't tend to have too much of a problem with, obviously, because I eat a lot of fruit. So obviously I stay quite hydrated. Although I do like a good coffee.
Yeah. So. One of our leading umpires in South Wales, Lynn Hall, is on the call, and Lynn graduated from club cricket into standing in Glamorgan second 11 matches, and he said
we've stood together. We've stood together many times.
Yeah, he told me that there was a game in Garndyffaith that was quite interesting, but his question was saying that when he umpired in Glamorgan second team games, some of the hardest decisions he had to make involved bat pad close to the wicket, simply because in club cricket there wouldn't be many opportunities when something like that would be happening subsequently. But I'm guessing with your background, having played, that hasn't been an issue for you. But would you say that some of the bat pad decisions are some of the hardest?
Yeah, anything where there's a lot going on. So there's a lot of people around the bat, slip fielders, leg slip, silly mid off, legs, short leg, ball spinning, batsmen are sort of playing with bat and pad together. It's balls ricocheting. It is tough. You've just got to believe in yourself. You've got to back your decision. You've got to watch the ball. The ball is critical in all this. You must watch the ball. You can't take your eyes off the ball. But the ball bounces sharply. It's almost like a rubber ball sometimes. But you just take your time in your decision, and it's basically if you follow the ball, you watch the ball, you'll build a picture up. You'll then almost get a second, how people appeal, what they're thinking. You almost have a bit of a second nature sometimes. And we've all got them wrong. Don't get me wrong. We've all got them wrong. And at the end of the day, players will just appeal sometimes. And that's just the way it is. And, you've just got to back yourself and go with that decision. If you get it wrong, did you get it wrong for the right reasons? Not wrong for the wrong reasons? I.e., did you get pressured into making a decision? That's why you gave it out. Well, that's the wrong reason. But you gave it out, but he didn't hit it. But yet you saw a deflection. There was a deflection there. Well, there you've just, it's just an error in judgment. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, another question quite a few people have sent in say, do you think it's helped you to become an international umpire by having played county cricket and also international cricket, knowing all the pressures that the games involve, do you think having played the game has made you a better umpire?
I wouldn't say it's made me a better umpire, but undoubtedly it's helped me along the way. I'm not saying for a minute that somebody that's never played the game can't become a 100 test match umpire. That's feasible. But I think if you've played the game, you've just seen more action. You've just seen more things happen. You've seen more crazy incidents on a cricket field or in cricket nets or whatever it may be. It's almost like having a lot longer in-depth education. That's all. You know, so I'm thankful for that. You know, and it has helped. It doesn't mean that the players will believe in you 100%. That doesn't. You've still got to earn your sort of your stripes, should we say? You know, and they can just disappear one by one with a couple of ordinary performances or whatever it may be. But yeah, you've still got to go through that education of actually umpiring and starting umpiring and getting to know players, getting to understand yourself, building relationships. There's a lot more to it than just counting to 6 and giving people out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, we haven't even mentioned Duckworth Lewis tonight, which is when you've got an umpire.
That's your job. That's not to do with me. That's your job.
Thanks, Wharfie. Yeah. Or it's the laptop I'm using tonight, actually. There's a gentleman called Saqib who has raised a question as well. And Saqib's actually keen to get involved. He's in his late 20s, and his question is, what is the right age to start umpiring?
Now.
Yes.
Now.
Late 20s.
Yeah, anytime. You're just lucky that you are in your 20s. So start now, start tomorrow, get your badges, get the qualifications, and just go and umpire. I wish I'd have started sooner, but I didn't. So start now. Brilliant.
Great answer. Duncan Evans has also sent in a question asking, who is the best player you've seen whilst you've been an umpire? First of all, in county cricket, and then secondly in international cricket. He hasn't said what he means by best, whether he means bowler or batter, so I'll leave you to interpret it either way. But in county cricket, so basically what we're saying is in the last 10 years then in county cricket and the last 5 years in international cricket.
There's obviously so many great players out there. But some of the best players I've seen, we are incredibly lucky in this, you know, in the UK with players that are top players, you know, world beaters. Obviously, we won the World Cup, or England won the World Cup last year. You know, players like Jason Roy are unbelievable. When you're up close and personal, seeing those types of players score heavily in county cricket, one-day cricket, T20 cricket, they're unbelievable. Joss Butler. I saw Moeen Ali score 200 just before he got picked, actually, in the test team at the Oval, going back a few years, maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, maybe. Just unbelievable players. But then when you go up to international cricket, I didn't really name one, did I? That was pretty... Jason Roy is one of my favourite players to see, to watch when he's on form. You know, he's fantastic. You know, the Fuller House 2020 match at the Oval and seeing Jason Roy just pepper bowlers all around the ground is pretty unreal to watch. It is unreal, you know, and we're just so lucky that he plays for England and stuff like that. Joe Root is unbelievable. I saw him score runs as a kid in Championship cricket. So, you know, we all know that these guys are stars. And then moving up to international cricket, you know, I've been lucky enough, people like Kohli on the field, but Babar Azam.
Mm.
Oh, he's such a wonderful player to watch. Wonderful player, Babar Azam. And then there's like Rashid Khan as a bowler. I don't know if many people would have seen Rashid Khan. He played for Sussex.
Yeah.
But obviously he's Afghanistani and he plays in all these leagues and stuff. And he's just a genius, you know. We talk about balls spinning and people around the bat and ball bouncing. These are the good things where you see players up close and personal, but they also test you in a way that you've never been tested before. So you come off the field after having Rashid Khan bowl at your end for however many overs, and you've come off and you've had a good game. That's just as satisfying as it ever was playing and having a good day.
Yeah. You mentioned Babar Azam. He got a pretty tasty 100 in the T20 at Cardiff this season, and it was just, for me, sat in the scorebox, just watching how he went through the gears, played quietly. But the one thing that struck me in particular, again, from the vantage point, luckily, up in the media centre, when he hit a ball, his placement, he very rarely hit fielders. The gaps, and it was the sweet timing, and it went through the inner ring, and you knew it was going to be a four. If you have to give us maybe some other names, a question's come in. Probably the final question tonight, which has come in, is the emerging players, not just the best that you've seen, but maybe some of the names, maybe from last year when you were doing more county cricket and maybe international cricket. Who are the names that we should be looking out for, Alex?
Oh, you've now put me on the spot. I like Bracey from Gloucester.
Yeah. As a batter.
Left-hand batsman. He's actually kept wicket quite a lot in one-day cricket, and I've seen him working on his fielding and his wicket keeping a hell of a lot this summer. Obviously, because he's been around like Test match sort of bubble. Foakes is another one. Obviously, he's played Test cricket. Whether he'll find it difficult to get in the team, I've no idea. Again, but he's a fantastic sort of young player, maybe mid-20s, that sort of age now. So hopefully, he's got a bright future. There's lots of good young players about. Dan Lawrence is a good player. He's quite nice on the eye. He's got a sort of a bit of a different kind of technique. He walks across his stumps, but a great timer of the ball. And, he looks quite good. He's obviously played in a team that's, won a couple of things last few years, and he's getting sort of that type of experience. Young bowlers, Saqib Mahmood's got something about him, bit of pace.
Up at Lancashire. Yeah.
Lancashire. I know he's been around the England sort of setup for a while, and he's played a few sort of ODIs and stuff like that. He's got something about him. Hopefully he can stay a bit fit. He can stay fit, and he's got a promising future. But I'd like to say something about the old guys as well. Stuart Broad and James Anderson.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, Stuart Broad almost got wrote off at the start of this sort of summer that's just gone. And for what he did, he came back again and proved everybody wrong. Or the press wrong. The press try and write him off every year, and he's just phenomenal, and I think that English cricket's in great hands. County cricket's in great hands. You've only got to see that. That could have easily been brushed aside this summer. But, women's cricket, exactly the same.
Yeah.
Cricket in this country, is in great hands, and long may that continue. And we want to see great players coming through, and, we want to see young Welsh players playing for Glamorgan and coming through. And, I'm sad to sort of see a few young lads have been released, in the last month and stuff like that. But, things do move on. And, I wish the club all the very best. And I wish, the game of cricket all the very best, to be fair.
Right. Well, that's those are very fitting words, Alex, to almost draw to a close this evening. I know I've got loads and loads of comments, how warm your comments have been. What a nice, down-to-earth, humble guy Alex is, and we've had an opportunity to know him better just listening to him, and they're very, very grateful, Alex, for your time this evening. And I think we will have to give you a virtual round of applause. I know that my little trademark at Cardiff, when we have a crowd in and I've got the microphone, is to say Borodar, good morning to our two-match umpires. But next time I've got the microphone in my hand and you're standing there, Alex, I'll say something special. But I've known you for a long time, obviously, and I knew Alex, obviously, that you were going to be a great subject. And thank you once again, and also for sharing some of those stories of umpiring in 2020 in the COVID restrictions. And I think all of us on the call tonight would just like to echo the sentiments that we're so grateful for people like yourself, like Goffey, Richard Illingworth, Richard Kettleborough, the others, Michael Burns, Martin Saggers and others, for making that big effort and going out. So thanks once again, Alex. Just to let everyone know that the next museum talk will hopefully be on the 12th of November, again at 7 o'clock in the evening. David Hemp is going to be joining us from Australia. It won't be 7 o'clock in the evening his time, but I'm just waiting for final clarification from David. I'm sure many of you know that he's recently been appointed as the head coach to the Pakistan women's team, and he's just clearing his own commitments. But if it's not the 12th, it'll hopefully be the 13th or fairly soon after that. And I can tell you, Wharfie, that he's got a very, very hard act to follow after your honest and your really, really interesting answers this evening. I'm just, as far as the other talks are concerned, I'm hoping to be able to make an announcement on the Glamorgan website and on the museum website in the next week about who the person is for the museum talk in December. So all I can say, it's a little bit of an ending like Alexander Armstrong on Pointless. Well, this evening certainly hasn't been pointless. It's been far from that. But I know they sign off by saying, it's good night from me, good night. So Alex, it's good night.
And good night from him.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. So thanks once again, Alex. Thank you so much. A wonderful evening.
My pleasure.
And
My pleasure.
We hope all goes well in the coming months, and we hope to see you back on the field and umpiring in your high standard involving Glamorgan and also around the world. So diolch yn fawr iawn. It's good night from me, good night from Alex, and thank you to everyone. Thanks also to Mark Frost for looking after the technical side of this evening. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night. North Star.
Thank you all. Thank you. Take care. Bye.